In 2021, I was living in a split-level ranch in a quiet suburb of Chicago. St. Patrick's Day fell on a Wednesday, and while the city was gearing up for the river dyeing and parades, my neighborhood was entirely silent. My wife was away visiting her mother, and I had stayed behind to finish a freelance project. Around 11:30 p.m., I was in my home office when I heard a distant, muffled clink coming from directly beneath my feet. It sounded exactly like two glass bottles meeting in a celebratory gesture. I froze, my hands hovering over my keyboard. My basement was unfinished, mostly storage, a furnace, and old gym equipment. I sat there for 3 minutes, the silence of the house pressuring against my eardrums. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a shelf had shifted, or the water heater was acting up. But then came the voice, a low, melodic hum of a song I didn't recognize, followed by the sound of a heavy chair being dragged across the concrete floor. My throat went dry, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my chest. I didn't have a weapon, so I grabbed a heavy mag light from the kitchen drawer. I crept towards the basement door, my breath shallow and jagged. As I reached for the doorknob, I smelled it, the unmistakable pungent scent of boiled cabbage and cheap whiskey coming through the floorboards. I opened the door just an inch. The basement lights were off, but a flickering green glow was reflecting off the washing machine. Someone had brought a battery-powered camping lantern down there and covered it with a green gel filter. I didn't go down. Instead, I retreated to my bedroom, locked the door, and dialed 911. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, I heard the basement door, the one I had left slightly ajar, click shut. But then, the sound of heavy, wet footsteps began ascending the stairs, one deliberate step at a time. I pushed my dresser in front of the bedroom door, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The footsteps stopped right outside my room. There was a long silence, then a soft, wet thud, like something heavy being placed on the carpet. The police arrived 6 minutes later. They found the back bulkhead door to the basement had been jimmied open with a crowbar. In the center of my basement, they found a small party set up. A folding chair, an empty bottle of Irish whiskey, and a plate of corned beef that had been stolen from my own refrigerator earlier that day. The intruder had been in the house for hours before I even realized it. The thud I heard outside the bedroom door was a gift. The police found a damp green felt hat sitting outside my door, soaked through with sweat and rain. Inside the hat was a folded up napkin with a handwritten note that read, "Thanks for the drink, neighbor. See you next year." DNA from the whiskey bottle matched a local transient with a history of residential squatting during holidays. He was never caught, but I sold my house 3 months later. I still can't stand the smell of boiled cabbage. In 2018, I lived in a third-floor walk-up just blocks away from the main parade route in South Boston. St. Patrick's Day isn't just a holiday there. It's an atmospheric shift where the air smells like stale hops and the sound of distant rhythmic chatter never quite stops. I'd spent the day working a double shift at a local cafe, so by the time I got home at 11 p.m., I was exhausted and looked forward to the silence of my apartment. I remembered locking the deadbolt and leaning my head against the wood, listening to the muffled chaos outside. It was a comfort to be separated from the thousands of intoxicated strangers by 3 flights of stairs and a solid oak door. I poured a glass of water and walked to my window to pull the blinds, but I stopped when I noticed a man standing directly under the street lamp across the road. He was wearing a bright green 3-piece suit and a matching top hat, which wasn't unusual for the day, except for one detail. He was perfectly still. In a sea of people stumbling, shouting, and moving in erratic patterns, this man was a total anomaly. He was facing my building, his head tilted in an unnatural angle, staring towards the third floor. I told myself he was just a guy who had overdone it and was trying to catch his bearings. I watched him for 5 minutes, waiting for him to sway or check his phone, but he remained a statue. My skin felt tight, a physical prickle running from my hairline down to my shoulder blades. I turned off my kitchen light so I could see better without being seen. When my eyes adjusted, I realized he wasn't just looking at the building. He was looking at my window. I moved back, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. To rationalize it, I told myself it was likely a friend of one of my neighbors waiting for a buzz-in. But then, I saw him reach into his jacket and pull out a small, handheld Polaroid camera. He snapped a photo, the flash cutting through the sodium vapor orange of the street like a knife. I didn't wait for him to take another. I crawled to my phone and called the non-emergency line, but the dispatcher was overwhelmed with parade-related calls and told me it would be hours before anyone could swing by for a loitering report. I spent the night in my bathtub with the doors locked, listening to the floorboards of the hallways outside. Every time a neighbor came home, I'd hold my breath until I heard the door click shut, terrified that the man in the green suit had followed someone through the main entrance. The next morning, the street was a graveyard of plastic cups and green glitter. When I finally worked up the courage to leave for work, I found a single Polaroid tucked into the frame of the building's front door. It wasn't a photo of me, or even the building. It was a close-up shot of my own deadbolt, taken from inside the hallway. Police later reviewed the lobby's grainy CCTV and saw a man in a green suit enter the building at 11:15 p.m. by catching the door behind a group of revelers. He spent 40 minutes standing silently outside my apartment door before leaving the photo and walking out. He has never been identified. Thanks for watching. If you have a true story, send it to acestruestories@gmail.com. If you have an idea for a future video, leave a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, there's always another story.